Welcome to the Create and Grow Your Brain Capital podcast. I am your host, Janine Letford, where we talk about everything brain health, creativity, just all the arts involved, and just really how to live a wonderful, flourishing life of creative contribution. And of course, you know, I bring to you the top minds around the world, actually, but these top minds are in an area that's very special to me. They are the top minds in Los Angeles at UCLA, but their work is going global. And all of you know I am a UCLA Bruin tried and true down heart. So it's a wonderful to bring their work to you. It's wonderful to talk about what's going to be happening later this week. So that's why we wanted to get them on the show and get this out to you right away. I have with me Dr. Indu Subramanian and Dr. Sahib Khalsa. And I am just so enthused to have such great thought leaders, but also people who care about the people and their journey through life with me. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having us.
So I know you are preparing. You're always just, you know, putting your work out there, and you're in the labs and all the things that you do, but you're preparing for a big event. And before we really get into just the topics of what you're studying and just how that's involved with just the brain journey, the brain's really just blowing up right now. This is the decade, the era of the brain. I would love for you just to quickly introduce yourself to the audience and what brought you to this work. So we'll start with you, Dr. Indu.
Oh, thank you so much, Janine. Great to meet you. So we too are excited about this upcoming event and to meet our minds. So I'm a neurologist. I work at UCLA. I've run a center of excellence at the VA for the last 10 years. I just stepped down from that position. I love the brain. I went into neurology because I love the brain. That was like the thing that spoke to me the most in med school. As I was going through my neurology residency, I fell in love with Parkinson's disease and the patients that we take care of. I loved veterans and who wasn't being served. So ended up starting a clinic at the VA many moons ago. I won't say exactly when, and have been passionate about giving care to veterans with Parkinson's. And Parkinson's is a disease that, you know, brain health speaks to, and the journey of a Parkinson's patient, especially our veterans, is so commingled with the mental health of the patient. Many of our patients have been through a lot, and so that brings us to why Sahib and I work together a lot.
All right. And I'm just writing down notes so I can kind of just formulate my in-depth questions to bring to you. But thank you for passing the baton on. Sir, if you can introduce yourself.
Sure. So I'm a psychiatrist and a neuroscientist. So I did dual training, kind of what you might call an indecisive overachiever. And when I was training to be a psychiatrist, actually, initially, I was interested in becoming a neurologist. And sort of when I practiced both fields as a medical student, I ended up gravitating towards psychiatry. But as a neuroscientist, sort of there's such a rich mix between these two fields, both clinically and from a research standpoint, that it's sort of hard for me to exactly pin where I stand there. But I'm a clinical practicing psychiatrist. In my research, so my clinical work focuses on anxiety disorders. I take care of individuals who are, again, at an intersection between the medical world and the psychiatric world. So individuals who have cardiac arrhythmias, who have developed anxiety or trauma and stress-related disorders, or depression related to their cardiovascular illness burden. My research also is kind of interdisciplinary. So I study something called interoception and its role in mental health, as well as physical health. And so we can talk more about interoception, but the sort of simplest conceptualization is that it's how your nervous system senses, interprets, and integrates what's happening with your physiology. So how internal organ systems communicate to the nervous system, ultimately to the brain, to regulate health and well-being.
So much there. I'm so excited. People love like pop stars, you know, like the singers and everything. And my pop stars are you too. So thank you so much. Let's start with the Parkinson's and certain dementias, and because everyone's starting to be concerned about that, especially as this work really comes to the forefront to the population that really didn't think about it too much, decades ago. Now, brain disorders, they say like 1 in 3, right now will experience it or know someone. What are some new concerns that people are having with Parkinson's or dementias that we should really be aware of? Any new findings coming out?
Yeah, I mean, so Parkinson's is a very rapidly growing disease. It's the fastest growing neurologic disease in the world. It has doubled in the last 40 years and was slated to double in the next 20 years, but we actually made that milestone in 6 years, unfortunately.
Oh, wow.
So we're really seeing a huge explosion of this disease. We still don't know if it's, there's, what causes it. There's definitely a genetic predisposition, but there seems to be a lot of environmental toxins that are involved. Certainly we're seeing it in younger patients. Globally, we're seeing it in many parts of the world. It does not discriminate, as I like to sadly say. It affects people in sub-Saharan Africa in huge numbers. We can't even get basic medications to some of these people, medicines that have been around for 70 years in North America and that are super cheap. We can't get these basic medicines to large parts of the world that are, have burgeoning numbers. And we're not sure why we're seeing an explosion. It doesn't seem to be matching, the life expectancy or the increasing aging population. It seems to be increasing at numbers that are beating those odds of just, how many people are living past the age of 80. And so it is of concern, and we're trying to figure out exactly what is causing it and how we can prevent it from happening in the first place. But, a lot of my passion is understanding how we can get these diagnoses to people who may not even know that they are at risk for having this disease. One of the issues is that it's been branded as a disease of old Caucasian men. If you Google the word Parkinson's disease, or you even close your eyes and think about somebody who has it, you're really thinking about, an old man slumped over, in a wheelchair, or that's how we learned about it in med school, these images of people with tremendous motor dysfunction who are largely Caucasian, who are old. And so if you look like you or I, Janine, you wouldn't think that we could get it, right? But there's a lot of young women of color that have it, that don't know that they're at risk for it, and are not coming forward to get diagnosed, or are sort of being told by their physicians that there's nothing wrong with them, because those physicians don't realize that minoritized or younger individuals, that women can get this disease. And so it's really something about, we need to be changing the sort of image of who gets Parkinson's, and helping to get these messages that it's a very treatable disease, that we are seeing more and more of it, and that people need to come forward with symptoms, and that we can hopefully change the trajectory of, how people do, using some of the things that we'll talk about in our conference, things around lifestyle choices, things around getting them to cope with the disease from diagnosis, understanding the stigma that a lot of these patients, especially if they don't look like those images, will experience just from getting the disease. When you are a woman who looks like us, and the disease is projected in society as the disease of older Caucasian men with wives who are affluent, you don't have the resources, you don't have the wherewithal to understand, why did I get this disease in my 40s? Why did I get this disease, living a relatively healthy lifestyle? So understanding what goes through people's minds when they get diagnosed, how to help them live better every day, and hopefully to change the trajectory. And a lot of the lifestyle choices that we'll be focusing on, and I think, are very modifiable risk factors that we can all work together to try to help people to live better.
Yeah, that's so good. And this is a conversation. So Dr. Sahib, if you have to jump in if you hear her say something, feel free to jump in as well. Don't wait for me to just ask
Sure.
you. Go for it.
I can. So a couple things there. One, there's a great movie that I saw a few years ago called Love and Other Drugs, that had Anne Hathaway and Jake Gyllenhaal, which was about a young woman in her 20s who had Parkinson's. So I thought we're in Los Angeles, movie pop star stuff, but it was, I thought it was actually well done from the standpoint of changing that narrative of who can have Parkinson's. The other thing that interests me in terms of the research that I do, and we wrote I wrote a review paper with some neurology colleagues last year, where we were looking at the evidence for abnormal interoception in Parkinson's disease, and there's quite a bit of evidence, and Indu will be able to rattle this off ad nauseum. It was something that I learned about in the context of this review, but there's quite a bit of evidence of autonomic neuropathy. So in the body, so Parkinson's beginning in the body, in the internal organ systems, and it's asymmetric. And so one of the things that I'm interested in from a Parkinson's standpoint is in terms of assisting that goal, how can we help better identify patients who are in that younger category who may have be in the early stages of Parkinson's, where you might be able to actually alter the trajectory. And if you want to get into the details at some point, we can talk about what that actually looks like. But I'm actually somewhat optimistic that over the coming years, we'll actually have some tractable tools that we may be able to use in the clinic.
So fascinating, because I wish I had you here for 3 hours, because I can talk more about this, because well, I don't know if you've looked at some of the work that we're presenting. We just presented the Brain Capital Art Strategy Plan to a lot of U.S. senators, of really looking at brain capital, which is brain health and brain skills, for our audience members who needs that review, but looking at how they're basically two sides of the same coin, right? And so with that, we are also saying, okay, well, number one, the bias. Thank you so much for bringing that up, to really address the biases that are going into this. And I loved how you brought up the fact that we're using the arts to try to help address this and try to reach the communities. But they're also using the arts to try to just help people through their journey. Have you done any research, any of you, on the dance and Parkinson's people using music and rhythm to help people who are living with this disease to just better go through their journey?
So I know the Dance for Parkinson's people. They're amazing. Their energy is so spectacular. I mean, you just meet them, and we actually had some virtual classes. They had a pivot to virtual over the pandemic, and I interviewed one of the David Leventhal, who's based in New York, who's one of the founders, and he just was able to, through even the Zoom screen, bring us all in and captivate us and get us moving, which was really beautiful. So what we haven't told you, Janine, is that Sahib and I actually met at an integrative medicine meeting, an Ayurveda conference. I'm board in integrative medicine, and Sahib has a very strong relationship, as do I, to contemplative sort of fields. He grew up and I'll let him speak about that, in a very interesting environment. And then I fell in love with yoga and mindfulness and got trained in both of those, and trained to teach as well, and then did a contemplative medicine fellowship during the pandemic at the New York Zen Center. So we both spend a decent amount of time thinking about the mind-body approaches, and feel very passionately that this is part of medicine. I just wrote a paper on spirituality. I think these things are finally starting to get acceptance in our fields as part of the medicine. When we talk about the arts, I think I have grown a huge love in my own personal life through my children being musicians, to listening to live music. And I tend to expand the definition of the mind-body approaches, which are classically thought of as things like yoga, breathwork, Tai Chi, mindfulness, into other arenas. So when I teach about this to my patients, I try to make things pretty accessible to anyone who may have, an interest in this, to try to get, them to think that some of the things that they're already doing might be part of this approach. And so I think when you get into flow states, especially in community, with people that you love, around live music, dance, anytime you can kind of lose yourself in any of these things, making art, cooking even together, being in that sort of state of creativity meets, the brain kind of, and stillness in some ways, and flow in some ways. I think it's very healthy for the brain, the nervous system, and the body. So, and for the spirit. And I think that sort of sense of community along with the arts is something that we definitely are proponents of. And I think there's, I just did a review paper. We ran a task force at the International Movement Disorder Society, which is our main society across the world in Parkinson's, and we put together like a task force of 20 people that included folks like a sex therapist, an occupational therapist, a physical therapist from all over the world. We had different folks sort of weighing in, and we came up with this sort of Parkinson's prescription to give people who are, hopefully as soon as they get the diagnosis, you have Parkinson's, and here are a bunch of things that you can do for yourself to live better. And in that prescription, we reviewed the literature on things like dance. There's some very cool things, from the dance literature, drum circles, art, various things that music therapy that are very beneficial for our patients, and especially in the non-motor realms and in the mental health realm. So yes, it may help you calm down with your tremor, but actually the effects on things like sleep and anxiety, those are actually very beneficial. We don't have a lot of great treatments for some of those things.
Wonderful. Did you wish to add in? She did mention that you had a background story in a different area about the mind-body connection.
Yeah, I guess what I would say is that I grew up in a community of yoga and meditation practitioners. So from an early age, I had the opportunity to both experience and benefit from practicing certain types of yoga. In this case, it was Kundalini yoga, which does involve a lot of breath and posture-based rhythmic movements, and so I think from so in fact my whole interest in interoception grew out of trying to better understand sort of the long-term effects of practicing meditation. Does it in fact change your experience and your awareness of your inner body, of your breath, the way that oftentimes the first thing that is taught in a mindfulness-based practice is awareness of breath. So does that actually translate? But from a Parkinson's perspective, I sort of a very general observation from my standpoint, and certainly not as well qualified or experienced as Indu's, is that engaging in these sort of autonomic regulatory activities and also rhythmic motor patterns clearly has benefits that beyond sort of the tremor, but into that mental health space that are worth looking at, that are worth studying, and they're really overall within a contemplative neuroscience lens is sort of taking a step back and saying, okay, how does mind-body practice affect the overall individual? How does it affect somebody, not just in terms of their blood pressure or in terms of their anxiety or in terms of their tremor, but when you step back and you look at the whole person, you look at the whole system. We'll be talking about brain health, and so in terms of the whole nervous system and what all of that means, there's certainly value to these approaches, just as there's value to lasering in as we have for the most of the last century, and the early part of this one, in terms of doing really high quality reductionistic science to pinpoint things like molecules, genes, mechanisms that are relevant for disease. But at the end of the day, you have to be able to put it all back together, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the reasons why I like that. And I've been very active in supporting a new organization called the International Society for Contemplative Research. I'm a founding board member of that. We had our third conference last year. Indu came to the first one as well. So we had a great time sort of seeing witnessing the birth of that sort of international contemplative science community. And so again, I think that there's a lot of excitement building around additional ways of looking at the body, of looking at the brain, of looking at the whole person from a standpoint of optimizing human health.
Amazing. The mind, body, and all of that. Your International Society for Contemplative Review or
Research.
Research.
ISCR. Yeah.
Okay, that reminds me of because we're doing something called neurosomatic creativity, which is how do we best really develop that mind, brain, body, spirit connection in order to enhance our creative thinking. That's the root of my work is creativity. But I was like, let's call it International Society for Neurosomatic Creativity. So the acronym could be InSync. Get it?
Mm.
I'm going to the NSYNC conference. So, sometimes it's all about the acronym, right?
Yeah.
But thanks so much for sharing that. And when we upload, I'll try to find the link to put it there. And before we head into the interoception talk, so there's some things coming out of things like Parkinson's could be caused by like people like golfing and the not golfing, but the grass areas or dry cleaning. Or can you address any of that?
Yeah. So in the toxins that we're talking about, there is a concern that pesticides are at risk, like they're causative possibly for Parkinson's. Additionally, there's a chemical called trichloroethylene, TCE, that was actually used for cleaning pretty much everything from clothes, like in dry cleaning, to even cleaning parts of like camera equipment and cars and planes, and it was like just a very nice, I guess, thing that would remove grease and other things. So that has been, people would literally use that all day in their workplace, and then there's been some concerns that those chemicals have been in the environment and created sort of toxic hotspots around the country, around the world, around which people have been exposed to these chemicals and then are at a higher risk in epidemiological studies of getting Parkinson's. There's also been certain chemicals in pesticides and in and around food sources that have been tried to be banned by a number of us that are advocates in this space. Many of these chemicals are currently not at all available in other countries, Europe and around the world. And for some reason, we continue to have them in our environments here. There's been a huge lobby, and even currently, actually this week, leading up to the Brain Health Conference at UCLA, there's a number of my favorite patient advocates and folks that are in Washington trying to lobby for getting rid of paraquat, which is another one of these chemicals. So I think the thoughts about the golfing is really the proximity to sprays that are on golf courses. And if you live near a golf course or I guess play at a golf course regularly, that you would be exposed to these sorts of chemicals. So a lot of these are, we're trying to understand. We at UCLA are involved in the PEG study, which is looking at Parkinson's environment and genes, looking at the Central Valley and all the sprays that a number of folks, farmers and other folks have been exposed to there, and understanding what the incident risk of Parkinson's is with some of these chemicals. So I think it's a very, very hot area, and we're just trying to understand those things, but in the meanwhile, also to help people who may have been exposed, may be at risk, to live better, with the diseases that they're getting now.
Yeah, and that's very convoluted because how much can you control, right? The area, especially when you want to get into the conversation of access and just environment, right? The built environment around you, and poverty, and just how much you can control what you're. And then the washing of fruits and everything, they call it like the dirty dozen and the clean 15, and there's so much there that we're just trying to get to the people. And then the whole other conversation of these aren't available in Europe, so why are they over here, especially with toxins in the food. So that's a whole other conversation that we're trying to lobby for, or just get our senators to be more aware of. But with that, let's talk a little bit about interoception. Interoception, a new word. I saw some research, as my son is a part of the Phoenix Boys Choir, who just won a Grammy last month, by the way. He wasn't in the group. That was the older boys. He's 8. But they were talking about even how people who are in part of choirs and who sing have sometimes higher senses of interoception because, the instrument you're actually using is in your body. So there's a higher need to sense. You don't have to start there because a lot of people don't even know what that word is. So maybe if you can give a basic definition and then talk about what you want to talk. But if you could talk about the music aspect, I don't know if you've done any research in that area. We would love to hear about that.
Sure. So, you call it a new word, but it's actually an old concept. The word was given birth in the English language in 1906 A British physiologist by the name of Charles Sherrington coined this term when he was talking about different ways that the nervous system processes sensory input. And he was talking about just basically doing the same old thing with reductionism, dividing. So he was looking at the world around the nervous system, and he said there are sensory signals that are external to the body or exteroceptive. There are sensory signals that are internal to the body or interoceptive. And then he didn't really know what to do with sort of your joint position and your movement sense, so he just coined proprioception, sort of somewhere in between. And so between those three terms, you can encapsulate all of the different ways that sensory signals reach and penetrate into the brain and then have impacts on various things, just like how you are seeing and hearing me on this podcast right now, right? Now, the problem is that, you know, why are we only hearing about this in increasingly public venues now? We've had a big problem in terms of figuring out how to study this thing. So there have been tons of Nobel Prizes awarded for visual and auditory processing. We know where all the taste and smell receptors are. We have them, the pathways mapped in excruciating detail. But when it comes to looking at the signals that are coming from within the body, that are in fact much closer to the brain, we're really way far behind. Part of the reason for that is technological. Part of the reason for that is conceptual. Okay, so the conceptual issue is that we can talk about seeing and hearing, and those are single sensory signals. But when we talk about interoception, there's far more interoceptive senses than there are of the canonical sort of 5 exteroceptive senses, right? Of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, right? Did I get that right? Hearing? Did I miss?
Yeah, you said sound.
Sight, yeah, sight, sound.
Hearing, yeah.
I should know this.
Some people in the press will write about interoception as like the 6th sense or something like that, but it's much more complicated, because when you think about how your brain senses your heartbeat, or your breath, or your stomach and sort of your entire gastrointestinal tract, or genital urinary sensations, even the chemical sort of osmotic sort of composition in your bloodstream, right? When you're dehydrated, for example, or when the acidity changes. So there's many more of these senses than we think about for the canonical ones. And each one of these probably has its own dedicated neural circuit, right? The problem is, from a technological standpoint, how do we access that? From a conceptual standpoint, how do we, even just think about this entire system to maybe try to map some of the basic principles that are quite different from things like visual processing and auditory processing. For example, if you light a candle on a mountaintop, 10, 20 miles away on a dark night, the eye can detect that, right? Our visual systems are very finely tuned to visual input, whereas our interoceptive system, in terms of its tuning to something like the heartbeat, most people can't actually feel their heartbeat very well when they're sitting here under resting conditions as we are. But we all know what our heartbeat feels like. We all know that usually it's during a period of intense arousal. It could be anxiety, it could be excitement, it could be fear, right? It could be because you really need to take urgent action, or it could be just all of a sudden, your nervous system starts emitting these signals, and maybe in the context of early Parkinson's, right? And so how do you interpret that when you can't see that, quote unquote, from a distance, and when the signal is also masked and obscured by some of the normal physiologic processes that your body has to handle as a part of its daily functioning? So about 10 years ago, I had the privilege to organize the first meeting on interoception, international meeting, and one of the things that we hammered out was, okay, let's all agree that we know it's complicated, but let's try to at least come up with a consensus definition. And what we did was we sort of took the concept from Sherrington. By the way, Sherrington's other contribution, he was a Nobel Prize winner. One of the other things that he won a Nobel for was conceptualizing the synapse. the idea that there are actually spaces between neurons, that the brain isn't just a single unicellular sponge. So this is, this is how old that concept is, right? So exactly, it's the 80 billion neurons plus all the other support cells. So what we came up with was that interoception is not just simply a sensory signal stimulating a receptor, but it's this broader process of how the nervous system, so not just your brain, not just the central nervous system, the brain and the spinal cord, but all of the nervous systems that you have, the peripheral nervous system, the autonomic, the enteric, the peripheral, how in concert this system senses, interprets, and integrates all of these signals coming from internal organ systems to give you a moment-by-moment mapping. Right now, even your brain and your nervous system are doing this, of how the body's doing. And that mapping happens across conscious levels. So what you say you can feel. So, well, in terms of like the singing, I'll talk about that in a second, right? We have direct access to our respiratory system in exquisite detail, much more than we do our cardiovascular system. But then there's this whole layer of unconsciousness. And if you think about an iceberg metaphor, most interoception, like an iceberg, is below the surface of conscious awareness. Most of the signals you can't feel, but when something changes and you need to feel it, let's say, you have a kidney stone. You can't feel your kidneys normally, but if you've ever had a kidney stone or you ask somebody what that pain is like, they'll tell you 10, 11, 12 out of 10 pain, worst pain ever, right? Wow. You immediately orient to what's going on within your body so that you can take action, right? So it's a critical, fundamental sense for survival, but it's more complicated than any one of these individual exteroceptive senses, right?
I'm going to pause you right there. I just remember telling my 8, well, he's 8 now, but maybe when he was 3 or something, or we were trying to potty train. And I remember saying, your body's speaking to you. Your body's an instrument of thought. So, you got to hear your body when it's telling you to go to the bathroom, So is that like a basic, just common introduction to it that you would do with a child, but and then continue with your end?
Yeah. So I'm gonna help sell somebody's book real quick. So there's a wonderful book called Listening to My Body by an author named Gabby Garcia. And it's probably the best explanation of interoception that I've seen for children, that's sort of broken down into very, very tractable concepts across different organ systems. And potty training is a great example because it's probably one of the earliest interoceptive skills that we learn as a species. We hope. We hope, and there are people who specialize in helping children sort of learn to tune into those signals. But it's such a basement level function, right? Once you learn it, you're done, and then life moves on, right? And so you can think of interoception as this sort of basement level foundational process that, just like a building, when the foundation cracks, everything starts crumbling, right? But you don't think about it. It's below the ground, right? It's there doing its job. And so one of the interesting things about singing, though, and the breath that's different is that you have a lot of sensory input that tells your brain what's going on with your oxygen, carbon dioxide levels, et cetera. But as soon as you think about your breath, sometimes you actually pause your breathing, right? You have this ability to regulate your respiration. And it's sort of this interaction between this automatic and volitional process that people who sing, learn. Opera singers are probably the best examples here, who they really do learn how to sense and regulate and fine tune these signals in great detail. Horn players. Actually, one of the things, I'm going to put a quick plug here for our UCLA Brain Health Summit. One of our speakers is Dr. Jack Feldman, who was the discoverer of the brainstem nucleus in the brain that actually regulates your automatic respiratory rhythm. Anyways, there's sort of some very interesting neurobiology with singing and with breathing in terms of the interoception of how these automatic centers interact with higher centers above the brainstem that are involved in regulatory breathing. We even published a paper on this a couple of years ago. So.
It's so exciting because I'm always trying to bring it back to creative thinking, but also bring it back to artistic thinking. And just, even in leadership, there's a lot of just move in the leadership development space, because I also do corporate training, and they're talking a lot about self-awareness, and then new words coming out like temporal awareness, predictive awareness, situational awareness, and people just, that gut feeling. And I don't know if that's all that's attached, but Dr. Indu, did you have anything to add with what he said?
Yeah, I mean, I think, on a personal level, I think it's such a complex thing, right? Like that you can sort of sense things. And certainly I've personally felt at times, this sort of sense of, I tend to have low blood pressure at times. And if I get, sick or off my game, sometimes my heart rate is like super high, just lying in bed, like get sweaty, clammy. And then I'm like, I feel like I should be having a panic attack, but like, I'm like a neurologist. I'm like, no, I'm actually not having a panic attack. So like, what is going on here? So it's interesting to kind of, view this sort of as somebody who studies this and talks to patients about it. But our patients with Parkinson's experience this a lot. I mean, as Sahib mentioned, there's the autonomic nervous system. So that's that nervous system that's quietly in the background regulating your temperature and your blood pressure and your your heart rate and everything. And I will say one other thing is that, being perimenopausal, I had a number of patients over the years when I was younger who would say, Doc, I have no idea. Is it my, is it hot flash? Is it my Parkinson's? Is it my medicine wearing off? Is it my, my blood pressure, crumping out? And now that I'm sort of experiencing some of these things myself, it is so interesting to experience some of these autonomic sort of features and be trying to code like, okay, well, what is this? Is it like, am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Like, because normally we're used to being able to regulate certain things that we have control over, but this is something, especially as women, and I think there's been more attention, these days towards this, but, just sort of like, I think we all experience these, areas, be it, with potty training or teaching your child to, self-adjust their sort of, regulate their emotions or whatever to, now in this perimenopausal time frame, learning about, how some of these things can affect the mind and the body at the same time.
Yeah, this is the age of your work, and my job, is to take all of your amazing work and make sure an 8-year-old can understand it, or someone who doesn't have a neuroscience background and they want to learn it about through music or through movement. So thank you so much for your contribution. If you could just, as we start to close out, just talk about the Health Summit. Why should we be excited? What are we looking forward to? Number one, we're at the UCLA campus, so yay for that. But anything else that we should be aware of?
And I think one cool thing is that, so what does it think is unique about this Brain Health Summit? So I've been interested in brain health sort of from different angles for a long time, really about wellness and helping, Parkinson's is a neurodegenerative disease. So you can almost predict through things like sense of smell, REM behavior disorder, so breakdown of sleep apparatus and things like that, how at risk a patient is for getting this Parkinson's in the first place. So we have this prodrome, then we have early Parkinson's, and then this sort of sense, once you've been a doctor, you sort of see, you can kind of forecast 25 years later of different types of things throughout the course. And, we're always trying to find things that are modifiable to help our patients feel in control of their disease state. So I think we've been excited to think about this sort of, wellness and, lifestyle choices to teach people. And, I think that brain health is health in general. And I've already told you that I think that mental health is so part and parcel of brain health, especially in a disorder like Parkinson's, where we have things like depression, anxiety, apathy, cognition, breakdown, in a very high percentage of our patients. So I think what's unique about this, so the AAN has been very interested, the American Academy of Neurology has been interested in brain health as neurologists, and the EAN, the European Academy, have put out some definitions. This is a very cool sort of meeting of the minds of the neurologists as well as the psychiatrists. And I think you'll see sort of this energy and ebb and flow also hopefully of folks like Sahib and I who have worked together. We've written about, something like anxiety. And so thinking about it from a neurology hat as well as a psychiatry hat and bringing these concepts together. So I think, the sort of classic definitions that we'll talk about, which the AEN came out with, will be sort of thinking about, from a psychiatry lens, what does that mean? And so I think it'll be very unique. And the people that we'll be bringing together, I think for that reason, will be enriched from seeing this sort of in some ways, two sides of a coin. If you want to break it down to sort of that sort of, as Sahib said, the reductionism that's classic of these two things are separate. But I really feel that they are very connected. And so it'll just be fun to sort of talk around these things that we all sort of see in our patients from different angles. And hopefully we can meet in the middle with a way to sort of help define it, help, sort of think about how we can promote it and work together sort of in the state of California to sort of measure it and to really get resources behind it.
Awesome. And closing out, any last
Sure.
thoughts about this?
Yeah, I'll try to be brief. So to me, what's exciting about this meeting and this movement in general, brain health, I still find myself asking, what is it? And I'm looking forward to learning at this meeting from the excellent speakers that we have that are going to be coming from all over California. But one of the things that has already sort of left a deep impression in me is that brain health really is a unifying framework in both medicine and public health. And so it's something that spans the entire lifespan. It extends beyond disease-based models, right? So, we developed the fields of internal medicine and psychiatry and neurology, and to great benefit in terms of lasering in on specific disease mechanisms. But now, as we look at how can we actually optimize somebody's health and well-being across the lifespan, it really does begin to put the pieces back together with all of the knowledge that we have. So to integrate neurology, psychiatry, many other health disciplines. One cool thing, so one of the reasons I was not so interested in neurology as a medical student was that I was waiting for patients to get better. And many of them do, but a lot of times with, like, say, stroke, et cetera, like it's a tough process. And so the idea is, there are dynamic and modifiable elements that if you take a brain health perspective, you may be able to do things like prevent irreversible declines. You may be able to, using novel measurement and monitoring approaches, really drive societal, but even economic and population level well-being, as you know, Janine, because you highlight this all the time in your work. But again, what we're really going to be focusing on toward the end of the meeting is really how do we translate this framework into some sort of coordinated population level action. And we'll see if we actually do that.
Yeah, well, feel free to throw my name out there. That's what we're trying to do, and just take your work with Lyrics and Leadership for Brain Health. And then, as you know, Brain Alicious Adventures is trying to get this into fun ways for families, kids, grandparents, and intergenerational movement of the work that you all are doing. And thank you so very much. And if people wanted to find you, they can go to the links, or if there's any particular place you want to send them, let them know now. Any particular place?
You can find me on LinkedIn, you can find me on X, you can find me on Blue Sky, or by email.
Awesome. Same there. Well, thank you so much. Have a good rest of the day, everyone. We will see you in Los Angeles for the Brain Health Summit. Continue being creative and continue doing your lifestyle behaviors to have brain health throughout the lifespan. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you so much.
We'll see you there.
Bye.
Bye.